Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome somebody who's already on stage, Mr. Richard Newman! Yeah, should be good. Try it.
Hello. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad I'm here.
Right, okay, so what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to start off, have a brief conversation. If you've got any questions and things like that, give yourselves a little bit of time, and then we'll be running around with some microphones a little bit later on for you to ask some questions. So, are we doing this standing, or are we sitting?
Let's sit down. Let's sit down. Okay. Take a load off.
Thank you.
I was in the bar far too late last night.
Oh, right. You're not the only one.
Yeah, I know.
Anybody in the bar late last night?
Good for you for showing up today.
Right, okay, so then, we always ask our guests this, and it's always the most meta question. If you have to be able to answer it, good luck to you. Who is Richard Newman?
Oh, Lord. I have been an actor all my life. I was one of those kids who in grade school wrote plays, got my friends together, and did them for our families, did them in school. The only thing I've ever wanted to do is to pretend to be other people. I don't know what that says about me, actually. But yeah, I've been doing this for half a century, and I intend to do it for another half century because I'm not done yet.
So where did that bug come from then? Was it just, can you put your finger on it? Was there one thing that made you go, yes, that, or?
I think being a goofy kid and having people laugh and pay attention, and I went, oh, this is fun. It's a nice way for people to kind of, rather than, you know, kind of getting into trouble and having people pay attention to you, make them laugh. So I think that was probably the first impetus. Is I come from a large family. I had 2 brothers and a sister. And getting anyone to pay attention to any of us was somewhat difficult. So I probably just started gravitating toward playing characters and being a goofball. And it was fun. And then somebody kind of told me I could do it for a living. So, oh really? That's what we do, actors do. We play Let's Pretend. And sometimes we get almost paid for it.
So when you were growing up and you were writing your own stuff and performing your own stuff, what sort of things were you doing? Was it comedy? Was it drama?
Well, some of the things I remember doing a parody of an old Western, American Western called Gunsmoke. I was in grade 5 and grade 6 in history class. I wrote plays about the deaths of Socrates and Julius Caesar. I was kind of a morbid kid. So yeah, it was just whatever popped into my head, basically. Whatever anybody suggested, and I could get excited about it.
And so, tell us about the move then from it being a hobby and something to get attention to moving into the professional area.
Well, I had a wonderful high school drama department with 2 teachers who directed as many as 4 shows a year. So I got to do a lot of theater in high school. And decided that was where I wanted to spend my time. Then I went to university and majored in theater, and then went to theater school at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. From there to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and from there I got a job touring the hinterlands of British Columbia with a children's theater company. And at the time there was this war going on in the States. So I just thought, oh, I'll stick around Canada for a few years till this war is over. And by the time I had done that, I lived there, and still do.
You mentioned the Shakespeare Company. Shakespeare is a big part of your career.
Absolutely.
There's one as well, which, because I've checked this on Wikipedia, you were nominated for an award for your performance as Shylock from The Merchant of Venice.
Merchant of Venice, beautiful play. I was so proud of that production. If you know the show, it's a play about, it's a play sort of about a wager. And the main villain in it is a Jewish moneylender. When Shakespeare wrote it, there were maybe 3 Jews in England. So it was kind of a not a mythical character necessarily, but not somebody that a lot of people had met. So the character was always played as a villain until World War II. And at the end of World War II, because of course, the Holocaust, people felt bad about doing The Merchant of Venice and painting Shylock as the villain that he had always been. So it became this apology. The show became about a bunch of nasty Christians who mistreated this poor Jewish moneylender. And it sort of perverted the idea of the play, because the play is about racism. Merchant of Venice takes place in Venice at a time at which it was a very racist society. And not just the Christians were racist, the Jews were racist too. And that's how Shylock gets in trouble, because he allows his racism to take over and to try to get vengeance. He actually is a better person at the beginning of the play and then turns into somebody nasty. So it was a great pleasure to be able to do the play that Shakespeare wrote as opposed to the what would you call it, the adaptation that people felt they had to make after the Second World War.
Do you remember any of it?
Well, this is the other thing that we decided.
Shylock is played like a Jew, like an old Jewish guy with an accent all the time, you know?
But we conceived of a society in Venice where Shylock had been born there. And the only thing that differentiated him from the society in which he lived was the skull cap he wore. So when Shylock talks to his enemy Antonio, instead of going,
Signor Antonio, many a time and oft in this Rialto you have rated me.
we did this. We went, Signor Antonio, many a time and oft in the Rialto you have rated me about my money and my usances. It just sang. It just became a completely different show. And I just enjoy doing it so much. If I could remember the rest of that speech, I'd go on.
Well, you did get a little bit of Shakespeare there, ladies and gentlemen.
He is definitely my favorite author. I've done a few dozen Shakespeare performances. I've done I've done Hamlet about 5 times, actually, playing different characters all the time. Never Hamlet, unfortunately. But I've gotten through the rest of the guys in the show.
So it's just waiting there for you.
I might be a little past it now, although in Vancouver a few years ago there was a company formed called the Western Gold Theatre Company, and it was a company of senior actors. And one of the first meetings, a wonderful actor who's no longer with us named David Glyn Jones said, "So do I finally get to play my Hamlet?" But he didn't.
So you did theatre work, but a lot of people here will know you as the voice of Rhinox and Vector Prime. So where did that transition come from? How did you move there? Because you only started voice acting in the early 90s?
In the early 90s, yes, that's true. It's so interesting too, and this is about this industry, it's so crazy because you just got to keep banging your head against that door. I had auditioned for so many voice things and not gotten a sniff. And I was so frustrated. I was so frustrated that I got an audition for a character called Mr. Big in a series called Video Power, which was basically one of the first times that a bunch of heroes from video games and villains from video games were brought together into a series. There were 5 heroes and a bunch of villains, and I played 1 hero and 2 villains in the piece. But the audition I did, I was so aggravated by the whole thing.
Mr. Big, his name is Mr. Big, okay, I'm doing this. This is Mr. Big.
Remember what Paul said yesterday about having a sustainable voice? They chose that voice. And we recorded 40 episodes over 3 months. So we were doing basically 3 episodes a week. They'd come on Tuesday, we do 2 episodes on Tuesday, and then another episode Wednesday morning. And it got to the point that I had to say, could we work this out so that Mr. Big does, say, the morning and then the next morning and doesn't do the afternoon? Because this is killing me. But we got through it, and from that, the rest of the work just kind of fell in. It's like, once you open that door, it just opens wide. And I've been so fortunate in the last 20-some years to take part in some really wonderful tune shows. I've had a great time doing it.
So were you already in Vancouver at the time, or did you move to Vancouver for the voice work?
No, I've been in Vancouver since 1970. That children's theater tour happened in 1970, so I've been there for 46 years on the 24th of August. 46 years? I'm not old enough to have been somewhere 46 years, am I? Oh, maybe, yeah.
Right, we've got some runners running about, so if you've got some questions, stick your hands up. All right, okay, we'll take a couple first. Do you want, shall we? Just, yeah, we'll go here.
Do you have any fond memories of working in Beast Wars?
Oh, sons of fun memories. The neat thing about doing prelay, which is when we record the voices before they draw, is that it's like doing an old-time radio play. There's a bunch of actors standing around microphones. We've all got the script, and we're all playing off each other. I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and we're talking to each other. And it is one of the zaniest bunches of folks I've ever worked with. Gary Chalk and Ian Corlett, who we all call Jimmy, and I'm not sure why, I just know we do. Jim Burns, and of course, the one, the only Scott McNeil. And anytime you're in studio with Scott McNeil, it's a bizarre and wonderful experience. He's one of my favorite people in the world. But mostly what I remember is just the fun of being in the room. Now, I will tell you about one particular day. On the 25th of January, 1996, my daughter was born at 5:45 in the morning. At 9 o'clock in the morning, I was in studio doing an episode of something called Sky Surfer Strike Force. Left there. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was in studio doing an episode of Beast Wars. Left there, went home, looked at my newborn kid for a second, and then drove back across the Chuck into Vancouver to open a production of King Lear. One of the most exciting days of my life, and I will probably never forget it.
That's what I call a hard-working police.
That was the day.
So we're talking about Beast Wars. How did you come to be involved in the project, and then what was your knowledge of Transformers prior to that?
I have to admit, it was minimal to nil. I'd only been in the voice industry since '91, so I missed the whole first Transformers wave. And when the Beast Wars thing came up, it was a big deal, because not only was it bringing back this iconic series, but it was a whole new animation form. So everybody was very excited about what it was going to be, and I think anybody who had auditions was really excited about just the possibility of being able to do it. So it's quite funny, because generally speaking, I play a lot of villains. I play a lot of do not fail me, you know? So I kind of expected to be up for Megatron. And I expected David Kaye to be up for Optimus. And I expected Gary Chalk to be up for Rhinox. So it was quite bizarre and wonderful and funny that all three of us got to do something that we don't usually get a chance to do. And I think that was one of the secrets, one of the successes of the series, that we all had this chance to explore another part of our creativity.
We've got a question down here.
Could you please ask Linux to invite us all aboard the Big Horn Express?
Come along the Big Horn Express.
So you were mentioning there that you weren't expecting to get a part of Rhinox because you typically play the villain. Where did the voice for Rhinox come from then?
Well, again, I looked at this drawing of this huge figure, and of course one's assumption is someone that big is going to have a big, deep voice. So I just sort of went in with that. And the neat thing also about going into an audition with a director is that, okay, yeah, I like that, but can you do this? Now can you twist it that way? And by the time we were done, we created a character that I was very pleased to find out that they had liked.
Got a question over here at the front.
I'm a bit curious. As Rhinox, was there any particular performance that shined to you, like any moment in character that was your favorite?
Oh, it's got to be mung beans. That episode was so much fun. When you have a serious character, a character that you really expect to always be sort of right there for it, and you give him something funny to do, that to me is the essence. I just loved it, and it was such a clever episode and such a clever idea, and it just about destroyed the Maximal Space. I just really enjoyed doing that one. Absolutely.
Were you surprised by the level of maturity of the character that you found in Rhinox, given he's a big, burly rhinoceros who's a technical genius, but also has a deep spiritual side to him?
And it's the chain guns of doom and the smell of the flowers. It's like those are the two things. He can be as strong as he needs to be, but he also really appreciates the quiet and the simple. He'd rather be smelling flowers than beating up on anybody. And those were my two character clues, basically, who this guy was. And yeah, quite a lot of fun to play a sophisticated character. Not a one-dimensional character, but I don't think there were any one-dimensional characters in Beast Wars. Even those crazy Waspinator Terrorsaur guys had both sides to them, you know? It's a really well-written series. But the writing and the direction, we can only do what the writer gives us to do and the director allows us to do. So when we get lucky to have a script like Bob Forward's first scripts of Beast Wars and Sue Blue's direction, it was just a win-win situation for all of us. Just such a pleasure to do.
A question over here?
Sorry about that.
Not your fault.
Beans.
So if Rhinox were to appear again in a future series, would you like to be able to reprise the role?
Oh, of course. I mean, that would be such fun. It's interesting. Every time you play a character you enjoy playing, who doesn't get killed off, you think, ooh, I hope he comes back. I did an episode of Supernatural a couple of years ago in which I played a retired psychic, and they didn't kill me. So I thought, wow, I wonder if Oliver Price will come back. And somebody mentioned this X-Files episode I did last year. That crazy psychologist is still alive. So hopefully we'll bring him back at some point. But yes, I'd love to play Rhinox again if they brought him back. And you know, in this universe, you can kill a character and bring him back, and you just create a situation in which you can do that. So
It's called Beast Machines.
well, there you are. I mean, it was funny too because the first episode of the second series, the second season rather, everybody shows up going, oh good, we got 13 more episodes, we're all here. And Don Brown, who played Scorponok, no, it wasn't Don, it was
Don Brown.
was it Don Brown? And Doug Parker, who played Terrorsaur. They show up thinking they've got 10 episodes, and each of them had one line, and it was, and they were dead, and they were gone. And Gary, of course, because he knew a lot more about the series than we had, said, oh my gosh, any of us can go, because they killed off Optimus Prime early on, brought him back, so any of us are just dead meat if they don't like us, or if they decide that's where the plot has to go. So we were all very nervous during the second season. And when, of course, they killed Rhinox, but Rhinox didn't appear at the beginning of the third season, it was like, oh, now what's happened to me? So I was really pleased when they did that Tankor thing and brought me back in.
Question over here?
From going in from Beast Wars into Beast Machines, how did you feel about the transition from Rhinox into Tankor?
This is a question I get a lot, and it's a really interesting question, and I like to ask, you know, what your opinion was, because some folks, now as an actor, great challenge, fabulous challenge to take somebody who's been like the king of morality and the king of the good guys and turn him into a villain. That to me is just, that's so much fun to play. But I understand how a lot of people were really upset because a character they had come to count on, you know, it's like, Dad has gone rogue, you know? So for me it was a great deal of fun, but I can certainly appreciate how, to a certain extent, the fandom was not very, very happy about it, or a certain portion of the fandom was not happy about it. But it was a great, great storyline, I thought.
Should we take a quick poll? Hands up people who thought that the portrayal of Rhinox in Beast Machines was a good idea. And those against? Well, okay, it looks as though villain Tankor is the way to go.
As I say, I've loved playing villains. Always liked to play villains.
And I think what was really nice about that whole thing was the fact that at the end of it, after he dies, there is that moment with Optimus where...
Beautiful moment, a beautiful goodbye moment where his spark is, yes, exactly. It was a lovely moment to play. That whole arc was I thought, quite interesting, quite sophisticated.
So, obviously the reveal of Tankor isn't until later in the series as to who the Predacon generals are, even to the point why Tankor wasn't actually voiced by yourself.
No, it was, they actually auditioned me for Tankor and decided that my voice was just going to sound like my voice, too much like my voice, and they did not want the surprise given away too soon. So there were little hints about where Tankor might have come from. And then, of course, that fabulous episode where Paul and I are standing next to each other, and he is, we're kind of going back and forth until Rhinox's voice finally came out again. It was quite fun and silly in a way.
And it does have that much more gravelly tone to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, he's got an even deeper voice than I've got, I think.
Question?
Was there any part in the storyline that you didn't agree with?
Gosh. I guess, I didn't like it when those two guys got killed off. I thought we were in big trouble. But in terms of the actual writing, no, I thought that every twist and turn they took was so clever and so well thought out. And I mean, there was never an episode that ended with somebody going, well, that didn't make sense. Because they always made sure that the Bible was followed, and all the characters were consistent, and the story moved forward in a sensible way. So I can't think of any of the plot lines that didn't make sense to me.
When you're doing the voice acting, obviously, do you get told the personality of the creature you're playing, or is it just this is the script and make it your own?
That is a good question, because sometimes when you get an audition, there's this much character description, and they'll tell you, we want him to sound sort of like this, or sort of like that, or sort of like this actor. And then other times, you're just given the lines and you go, who's the guy? So it's sometimes best guess wins, which is somewhat frustrating. And then sometimes it's so over defined that you just have no creativity to it, right? So it depends. It depends on the project and who's written it and how strong an idea they have of the character they want to see. But again, if you're working with a director, he'll kind of help you negotiate the ins and outs. The most frustrating thing is when you only get lines and you're recording in your home studio with absolutely no feedback, which is happening a lot these days because some producers are getting too cheap to hire studios and directors for auditions. So that can be best guess wins, and it can be somewhat frustrating.
You say that shows are being produced without directors?
Not the actual performances, but the auditions are sometimes just...
Oh, just the auditions?
Yeah, you just tape it in your room, send it in. If they like you, they'll call you.
Here's a really big question, but I kind of have to ask. On Friday we did a quiz and there was a question posed around you filled in for David Kane in Transformers Energon for one episode of Megatron. How did that happen? Was David like on holiday or something?
I think he was off filming something. It seems to me, and that whole Cybertron and was a frustrating series, I think, to a certain extent, because people didn't seem to care a lot. It was kind of thrown together in some ways, so that if when David wasn't there, they just kind of found the actor who sounded most like him to throw that in because they wanted that episode recorded and they wanted it out now.
Well, the thing is, the thing that made it so weird was the episode itself wasn't actually in Cybertron.
Right.
It was in Energon. Which you
Right, that's right.
weren't in at all.
I wasn't in at all.
So were you just walking down the road one day and Sue just grabbed you by the shirt collar and...
Well, that was actually an ADR thing.
All right.
So I was just brought in the same way I get a call from my agent saying they want you to show up at such and such a time, and this is what you're doing. And I went, really? Have they recast? No. So yeah, play David Kay once.
Okay, we've got a question over here. Hello?
She was also in the bar too late last night.
So when you're working, because you mentioned before, like you're zipping back and forth between studios. So, because I know Vancouver is kind of like one of the big VO centrals. So, is there like a studio district or a studio city where like you can park your car and walk between them, or are you like just like taking like 5-mile drives back and forth all day?
Actually, there are a couple of areas where the studios are concentrated. Although Vancouver is like, it's really quite spread out, so, and it's right on the water, and there's bridges. It's like the Venice of North America in a way. So there are studios on the North Shore, and there are studios downtown, and there are studios in what's called the Mount Pleasant area. And yeah, they're basically all over the place. And it's funny because recently they've been kind of trading spaces. It's, oh no, we're not here anymore, we're over there. But they've moved over to here, and the guys that were there have moved over to there now. And you think, I don't understand that, but I imagine it's a matter of rent, how much the rent costs, you know, in a particular area. But there's a lot of studios in Vancouver and a lot of voice work going on. You're quite right.
So, following on from Beast Wars, we then go to Beast Machines, and then you have that one episode in Energon, and then we get to Transform Cybertron. Now, you mentioned that you sort of sensed that the feedback was that people didn't particularly latch on to it okay, but I mean, have you kept up? I mean, surely you must have, given the popularity of Vector Prime and things like that.
Absolutely. The thing about Vector Prime, and why when I say people didn't care, what I think that's in reference to the fact that there are certain episodes in which Vector Prime has an English accent, and there are certain episodes in which he doesn't. And the way that happened was a bunch of episodes were, this is ADR, so again, I'm in the studio all by myself, recording the lines from a half a dozen episodes. And then months go by, and they bring me back into the studio, and I asked for a voice ref, because it had been 6 months since I'd done the voice. Oh, we don't have a voice ref. But I'm sure it's just your voice. And something rubbed me wrong. I said, no, I don't think so, there was something. But anyway, I did it. Just did it straight. And then the next time I came to studio, they had a voice ref for me. And we realized that I'd done these first half dozen episodes with the English accent and the next half dozen without. And I suggested that, well, we have to re-record those episodes. And they didn't think it was important enough. So that kind of bugged me. I thought, we need to care more than that. So I'm a little upset about that series. But the fact that the character has resonated with so many people kind of takes the edge off a bit.
I've got a question down here. One patience.
Sorry. What is the highest your voice can go?
Oh my gosh, I don't know, I've never tried.
I'll probably get booed out of the centre for this one, but I've got a 9-year-old daughter, so I know all about this. I was wondering, because obviously you're known as Transformers, how you ended up working as Cranky Doodle Donkey in My Little Pony.
Oh yeah, Cranky. That is such a fun character. I love Cranky, and what amazes me about it is that Cranky has done I've done 3 episodes. The character might have appeared without speaking in other episodes. I'm not aware of that. But I basically have spoken 3 times in that series, and they haven't told me. That character has resonated with folks. It really makes, I don't know why, I'm just really thrilled that it happened. But again, it was just, I was called into audition. And I guess it's because I have this kind of a voice, you know, and I can do that thing. And I can certainly sound like I'm not happy. But he's a lot of fun to play. I hope he comes back, because he's just a gas.
Yeah, got a question down here.
Hi, how long does it take you to think, right, this is the voice I'm going to do for this character?
I don't think there's like a specific amount of time it takes. Sometimes you just know. Sometimes you just kind of go, oh, that's the voice, and that's going to happen, it's going to work. And then there are other times when I'm not sure, and when I'm not sure, I'll generally give them 2 or 3 different options because I'm not really sure what they're wanting. But the idea is to be as versatile as you can. So if you're not sure what they want, then give them the high-lows, the high voice, the medium voice, and the low voice. Let them choose, and they'll probably choose somebody else. So there you go.
Is there one role that you've played, whether it be on stage, television, voice acting, that personally resonates with you and perhaps is considered your favorite?
Oh my gosh. My first thought, in terms of theater, would be Roy Cohn in Angels in America, which I did for a couple of years in a couple of different theaters. A beautiful play. I think probably the best play of the last half of the 20th century. That was a thrill to do. When I was much younger, I played in a Canadian show called The Collected Works of Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid as poet, and that's an amazing piece of theater. That also was a lot of fun. In terms of animation, I would say the most fun I've ever had was probably doing Rhinox. It's a great character. And although that offends my other characters, and I don't mean to do that, guys. It's all right. I loved you all.
Those voices in your head again.
Oh yeah. They're all going to beat me up tonight. They're going to give me a real hard time.
Is that why you stayed awake so early?
To drink myself to sleep.
Yeah, I've got a question over here.
You had several roles working in a lot of anime dubs. Do you have one in particular that you enjoyed playing? Because I know that you played Golem in Monster Rancher and Dunkirk in Escaplone.
And there was a wacky little guy in Inuyasha called Totosai who was right out there. He was a lot of fun to play.
Dragon Ball Z as well?
Dragon Ball Z, which in Canada we call Dragon Ball Z. And Ginyu, of course. Again, another whacked out villain who was a lot of fun to play, because that was just, I can't say that, can I? That was just, no rules. No rules at all, just goes for it.
Back before Beast Wars, there was one thing that linked you to Transformers.
Ah, yes.
And that was the infamous director Wally Burr on Bucky O'Hare. I wanted to ask if you'd had any stories about his directorial approach back then, or if somehow in 5 years he'd mellowed out somehow.
You know, Wally is a prince. I don't know how many of you know that he had a stroke recently, and if anybody knows actually anything more than that he had the stroke, if anybody knows what his condition is, I'd love to know, because being over here, I'm not hearing very much. But Wally is great because he knows what he wants. He's got very specific ideas about what it has to be. And there's a particular thing that we used to call the crescendo. Which all of his, when you're having a fight, everything has to end up like this. So we used to love to make fun of him that way. But we also, at a certain point, he came up to direct the first few episodes of Bucky O'Hare, and then from then on for that, and for Conan the Adventurer, which he directed 1,000 episodes of. We used to think that we would wait for his phone call, because he was calling us from LA. We were now doing a digital patch. He didn't have to fly up anymore. And we'd wait for his phone call, and he'd be late. We'd be standing on the studio, we'd be waiting for Wally to call. And finally the call would come through, and we'd go, okay, Wally's got his bathrobe on, he's in the studio, let's go to work. But he was a lot of fun to work with, and I had a lot of respect for him, and I hope he's well.
So what's going on is he's stable, and he can understand what's going on, but he has a really hard time communicating. So his wife has asked that cards and letters be sent to him, and that they're read to him, and they're really cheering him up. So I can make sure that the con has that information, if that's something that you guys
That would
share.
be really special.
Really, thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you.
Jim, do you know if there's any way to get those to Wally? Is there anything you can do?
Yeah, I can get the address to you guys so that.
Okay, great. What we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to write a letter or anything like that, we'll make some space at the registration desk if you pop over there, and you can write your well wishes to him, and we'll make sure, thanks to Jim, we can get something to him.
One of the absolute kings of the industry. How many people have been brought into this industry because of Wally Burr? He's taught us so much. So God bless him.
then obviously it was Wally Burr alumni, Sue Blue, who directed you on Beast Wars.
And she's a dream. She's just so sweet. And again, like I say, the writing and the direction of Beast Wars was so much. It was just easy to do. The writing is good. The characters are there. The director runs you through it, and it's sort of like, oh, you're going to pay me for this? Okay. You know, it's just too much fun. Sue Blue is again one of the best directors I've ever worked with. Also, Helen Hunt's father. If you know who Helen Hunt is, her father Gordon is a fabulous animation director and has written a book about how to audition for animation. And anybody out there who is wanting to be a voice actor, that book is really, really good. Gordon
I don't know if this question's been asked, but in terms of Beast Machines, how do you feel like the end of the character of Rhinox? How do you feel that went? Is that
yeah, we did talk about that earlier, and we were talking about how a lot of people liked that character line, and a lot of people were a little upset by it. But I had a great time with it because, of course, it's a heck of a challenge for an actor to switch gears in the middle of a character. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, question over here.
Hi, I just want to know if you could voice any character from Transformers G1 or even G2, who would you like to voice?
Well, me like to do Grimlock.
I worked with Greg in North Carolina last year, and he's just a treat. Well, so's this one. He's pretty much a treat too.
He's ignoring you.
Well, and so he should.
It's those Americans again.
I know.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got time for one last, two last questions. We'll take one in the back there.
Hi, I actually do a lot of voice directing in my career. So what's the best piece of directing you could receive, and also what's the worst?
The worst is, three more just like that, only different. And the best is, you're on. It's basically to get the information from the director that, yes, this is the character. And then you're free to move. But yeah, that three more just like that, but different. And I've actually heard that.
Okay, and just at the front here, this will be our last question.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so me and my friend are actors at the moment, in training, and we're like budding voice actors as well. What's the weirdest thing you've been asked to do in an audition, and how has voice acting auditions changed from when you first started out to how they are now?
Maybe the weirdest thing I ever did, and it happened twice actually. One in a show called Super Duper Sumos, and also in a show called Puka. In both cases, I was asked to audition for an old Japanese master of, kind of wisdom and stuff like that. One was called Wisdom San, and the other was called, oh God help me, I can't remember. But they said, well, why don't you do a Jewish accent? What? You're kidding, right? No, let's see, because we don't care. We want it to be weird, we want it to be wacky. So both these Japanese characters in these two bizarre cartoon series have Yiddish accents. That's probably the weirdest thing I've ever been asked to do. The biggest change in auditioning for me is the advent of the self-record thing, which I loathe. I feel any actor works better with input, and to have to kind of try to guess what somebody wants is so frustrating. Because if you ask me for something, I can give it to you. But if there's no one to ask, then it's just best guess wins, and that's a very frustrating part.
And I take it that comes from just your theatre background, just working day in and day out.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of people from stand-up who do voiceovers. And I think they're a lot more comfortable with just creating on their own. But that's quite right, Dave. You're quite right. But the fact is, I've always had somebody out front telling me where to move, and if that's okay to say it that way. And one needs that secondary reinforcement.
Right, lovely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to bring our panel to a close. A big round of applause, and thank Richard.
Thank you so much for inviting me, guys.